Hello and greetings, and welcome to another episode of One Path to Wealth. I am your host, Jeremy Dicker, the Hebrew Hammer, and I'm very happy to be here today talking about this topic that's near and dear to my heart. I thought with all that's going on in this crazy world that we might start by talking about self-limiting behavior and share some personal stories about myself, my background, and then how I think about these things going forward. So I thought I'd start by sharing a story from when I was about 25 years old. Got in this business at age 17. Actually worked in a boiler room at age 15, making phone calls, but that's not part of this particular story. So I'm 25. I had some success in this business, and I remember I was in downtown Los Angeles heading to the Water Grill after I'd just given a speech to a number of financial advisors and individuals, and I'd been asked to invite my family. So my mother was there, my grandfather, and we all went to dinner. And we went to dinner at the Water Grill there in downtown, a beautiful old restaurant, if you know it. And I'm sitting at dinner, and I'm asking my grandfather, what do you think? How was today? And how are you enjoying your time here and the dinner? And he looks me square in the eyes, and he says, who do you think you are? And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, wow, that's an interesting comment, an interesting question. And so it wasn't for several weeks later that I was out on a jog, and I'm by myself. I'm taking this jog in LA, and I stop and I start crying. And I thought about that particular night, and I've thought about it many times since, by the way. And I thought about that particular night, and I said to myself, I'm the guy buying dinner. That's who I am. And I think all of us have these self-limiting behaviors that, whether it be from our background as young children, young adults, things that happen to us professionally or personally, that put us down a path that if we're not careful, if we don't start thinking about ways to solve some of that behavior that takes us down a similar path, then we're going to continue to perpetuate. We're going to continue to relive those behaviors over and over again. So recently, I was on the East Coast working, and I got back. I was a little tired on Tuesday and decided that in the morning, my wife, she gets up and walks our dogs every morning at about 6:15. And I seldom join her. I have before, but this particular day, I decided I was going to join her and go on that walk. And it's a beautiful sunny day in Arizona and warm out. Not too warm yet, but warm out, and kind of almost feels like you're having a hug, a nice warm hug. And we walk and chatting, enjoying the views and the weather and the blue skies. And I remember getting home that particular morning after the walk and feeling rejuvenated, happy, and a different kind of happy, not the kind where typically when I go in the morning, I go to the gym and I work out and I come back and I shower and I head to my office, start my day, make phone calls, check emails, all of that. But it was a different kind of happiness. And it was brought back to my attention that one of my very dear friends and business coach, Chuck, had said, it's our responsibility to reprogram the way we think about things. If we're unhappy, if we have those self-doubts, that self-limiting behavior, you have to reprogram the way you think about things. And that really never made a lot of sense to me until really this particular day when we went on this walk, and I felt so differently coming back. I have these self-challenges, these behaviors that I engage in that were never there, or at least I didn't realize they were at the time, but most certainly are, and they limit your ability to be the best version of yourself. And it was never more clear than when the way I felt, the difference that I felt by going on this walk and coming back and sitting with that and those senses for a minute and feeling that warm hug outside in the blue skies and what that ultimately meant and means. And it got me thinking, what other things do I do that are self-limiting? And what other things do I do that I could help improve myself on that would help me be better at what I do, be a better father, husband, friend, coworker, and CEO of a firm? What can I do to be better? And, while I get up in the morning every day and I start my day, very similar, go to the gym, work out, focus on the things that I need to attack for that day and that week. The comment that I made a minute ago about starting in a boiler room and at age 15, all of this ties together from the standpoint that, when you start in any kind of a sales career or in a financial services career, depending upon what year you begin, there are certain behaviors that are installed inside your psyche that help you be successful when you begin. But the success that you received early on will be very different than the success that you experience going forward. And what I mean by that is the things that got me to the dance 25 years ago, it's very different. The skills that are needed going forward are very different. So let me use some examples of things that I did then that you don't do or necessarily need to do today, and how they limit your success, how they limit your ability to be the best version of yourself, both personally, professionally, and even to some extent financially. So I remember I'm 15, I'm working in a boiler room, there's no windows, and it's just a bunch of young guys making phone calls. And this is in the mid 90s. And it was before I got started in the career. Obviously, I started at 17, 18. But you're there and you're making calls, and they tell you as a young kid, make 1,000 phone calls a day and make sure you hand off any interesting opportunities to the senior broker. And that's what you did. And you learned to make all those phone calls and to be very diligent about it, and to put on an accent if you needed to, or an affect to get past that screener and what it might be to get to that Mr. Big. And then in 95, when I began in the career at age 17, soon to be 18, they tell you got to start your day at 6:30 in the morning every day, be in the office preparing, be on the phone at 9 a.m. every day, and make sure that you're dialing at least for an hour, hour and a half. And then you're seeing your clients and your prospects over the course of that day and week. And at the end of every day, you should finish with a, happy hour or a hosted event or something where you can engage and get introduced to additional people, and so on and so on and so on, and rinse and repeat. The issue is that here we are 30 years later, and those same guilts that I feel or that I felt for not being in and in front of the computer or on that phone at 9 a.m. are the same guilts that I feel today. And the thing is that I'm not the same person I was 30 years ago today. It's not the same business. It's not the same career. In many respects, it's a lot better. In some respects, it's not. It's a different world that we live in today. But what all of this and these stories that I'm sharing about my personal and my professional background from childhood on up is that it all comes together. It all is part of who we are and who we become and who we've became. And as I think about my mother, who was a broker and single mother, parent of 2 children, myself and my sister, worked hard, did what she could with the best that she could, and with the skills that she had. When she would come home from work, I don't ever remember her having a drink or multiple drinks yet. Here I am, a father of 2, married, but most evenings I'll have a drink. And it's not that I feel like I need to, but at what point did I pick up the behavior that I decided to choose to do that? And what is that doing to my long-term success and my long-term view of what I can do if I just change certain specific aspects of my behavior every day? And I'm going to share a lot of stories on this particular podcast, and hopefully some of these resonate with the audience today. But I was sitting with a good friend of mine, Darren, who every morning he'll play pickleball for an hour and a half, start his day with a meditation, make sure that he's in bed at the right time, not having behavior that would not allow him to be the best version of his self that next day. And it got me thinking, because most days I feel like if I'm not starting my day and ready to address all the things, the client concerns, the items that are required of that day at 9 a.m., then I am failing. And that failure is something that is personal, that has been ingrained in a 30-year career, that if you don't do it that way all the time, you're going to be broke. You're going to be out of the business. Things aren't going to go the way that you want them to go, when in fact, all of those negative thoughts, all of those negative feelings are just things that are holding me back from doing the things that I can and should be doing. And when I think about the most successful people in any business, Jeff Bezos, when he decided to start Amazon, did he think it was going to become the enterprise that it's become today? I doubt it. But did he know that he needed to not be an online bookstore at some point? For sure. And did the decisions that he made along the way to ensure that his long-term view of Amazon and of the business itself would be successful, those decisions that he made were instrumental in ultimately the company's success. Now, does that mean he did it all on his own? No. He hired the right people, built the right systems, processes, plans, and programs to ensure that the business would do what the business needed to do. But what I'm sure he did do is that he decided along the way that there were certain things that were going to be non-starters, that he was going to be very clear about the vision of his both business and about his personal life and what he was trying to accomplish and do. You know, my parents were divorced when I was 3 years old. My sister, 18 months younger. I can paint the picture of the day that my father walked out and left. I can see it clear as day. And I was 3. So this is 45 years ago. Yet I struggle to remember certain very positive and pleasant things about my adult life. And that's mostly because I realized that, to use an analogy, it's a lot easier to focus on the car crash than on the rainbow. And I think most people, or at least certainly the ones that I know that have had some degree of success, struggle with that same set of circumstances. They feel like there are certain things that are better to remain way down deep, don't address them, because it helps you be a little tougher. It helps you deal with things of your day that you may not necessarily be able to deal with. When in fact, if you go back and you mourn those challenges, you get clear on why those challenges are there, you address them, they're ultimately going to make you into a better person, parent, spouse, boss. And as I was having this conversation with a dear friend of mine, actually this morning over a cup of coffee, and we're chatting just a bit about parenthood. His kids are quite a bit older than mine, and he's a bit older than me. One of the things that we discussed is, do you want to be a better parent? Do you want to be a better father? Do you want to be a better role model? And ultimately, if you can't answer that with a resounding yes, then you're going to continue to be on that wheel, and that wheel is going to continue to do what it's going to do. And does that mean that your kids are going to ultimately be better than you, not as good as you? Are they going to struggle? Who knows? None of us have a crystal ball. But all of these experiences really got me thinking as it relates to what makes you tick, what direction do you want to go, what are you trying to do, and most importantly, how do you start mourning and moving past some of these self-defeating behaviors? So where does that lead me, right? I thought about this on that walk, and I thought about this more today, and where does that lead me? And so I think as I started thinking about some of the coaching that I received from Chuck and some of the things that he helped guide me on and think through, where I wasn't necessarily ready to have that conversation or think through some of those things when we were talking about it at the time, what I've become more clear on is that you need to first decide that how you've done things are not the way you're going to do things going forward. The second thing you got to do is you got to make a decision that you want to improve, not for anybody else, but only for yourself, that you want to improve. The third thing is identifying things that'll help you improve, whether that be taking that walk in the morning or reading that extra book or putting down that second or third beverage late at night, making sure that you're getting into bed at the right time and feeling your best so you can attack the day the best way possible. The fourth thing is realizing that you're probably going to naturally want to go back to who you were before because that's your comfort zone. That's the thing that you've become most comfortable with, and it's natural to fall back on those bad behaviors. And then lastly, it's really identifying things that you want to do for yourself and for your family and for those that are around you that are going to help you continue to be happy. And again, I use the example of that walk. When I go to the gym and I work out and I train really, really hard, I feel fantastic. A little bit edgy, the blood's flowing. But I come home and I'm getting showered up, or I shower at the gym and I head into the office. Did that help center me? Now, for some, it might. I can say for me, it probably doesn't. For me, it's definitely something I need to do 4 or 5 times a week just to feel a bit more clear, just getting those toxins, getting that blood flowing. But does that really help you? Does it really help me with my mental clarity? And I'm not so sure. So I think that there's some evaluation that needs to happen there, and everybody's different, and it's certainly something that's going to change depending upon the person. But what I will say, and what this experience has really led me down, is this path of, well, I definitely want to get to a place where I'm the best version of myself and I'm delivering upon the things that I know I can deliver on. So why share the story? Well, I think a lot of people that I've spoken to over the years, and specifically in my career, share some of the same challenges and some of the same concerns. And some go through life just fine and they come out of it on the other side and it's fine. Some don't. Some can't get past some of the pain and don't know how to pull the sting. And I think with men, it's probably the worst, in that all of us feel like we need to be so proud, so strong, and can't ever show anybody that you're not feeling well or that you're showing any degree of vulnerability. And one of the things I feel like have been very important, both in my my blog as well as in these shows, these podcasts, is whether we talk about parenting or what's going on in business and things like that, is it's important to talk about vulnerability. It's important to be vulnerable. It's important to share what's going on with you, because if you can help just one additional person get clarity on who they are and what they're trying to achieve, one extra person, that's a success. Just one. And the opposite is you choose to not talk about those things, and forgetting what that does to other people, but just to yourself, it bubbles up and it will ultimately lead to a place that probably isn't so healthy, to a place that most certainly is not going to give the degree of happiness that each of us deserve as we get older. I know there's so many families that I know of where the kids don't talk to the parents, and I would never want that to be the case with my family. I know so many people that don't speak to their parents or their siblings, and all of the reasons as to why, when in fact, if a little self-reflection was involved, if a little conversation was there, then perhaps they can come out of it on the other side where the relationship with their parent, their children, their sibling, their extended relative improves dramatically, and it becomes something that is fulfilling for everybody. Because I think as easy as it is to sometimes stay mad or angry or whatever it might be, there is probably a lot less health in that than feeling fulfilled, happy, successful, all of those things. And I will tell you, the difference is that I can speak again to my own circumstance. When I have felt the most successful have been when I have felt the most empty. And that's all about those continued feelings from my childhood on up through my adult life, where I have not addressed and faced some of those self-defeating behaviors, some of the pain of the past, and I've just let it perpetuate and continue to be what it is. And so as I share that story, I think it's important that we all think about why we're here, why that happened. My grandfather was raised in an orphanage in Los Angeles, came to this country from what is now Ukraine. and his mother put he and his 3 siblings into an orphanage. They didn't speak the language initially, and that was very difficult. And he had to grow up in a place that he didn't probably get to feel all those feelings, that feeling of love and all of that. So if you don't do things the traditional way, in his mind, it probably was something that he wasn't interested in. He wasn't interested in the young guy that was successful, that was in financial services, that he just wasn't interested in that. And he didn't have the ability to express it. Now, does that mean that I think he didn't love me? No, I'm confident that he did. But he just couldn't express or get past the point where he could look someone else in the eye and say, hey, great job. And those were the things that were ingrained in him and who he was. So as we fast forward now at age 48 and with 2 young children, lots of people that depend on me, from employees to partners to friends to family, what I don't want to have happen is to have that repeat itself. So as we prepare to close this week's episode of One Path to Wealth, I think what's very, very important is to realize that at the end of the day, you can have all the wealth in the world, and without your health, both mental and physical, you have a lot of money that's not going to help you at all. The flip side of that coin is you can have the best health in the world, and that means you're going to live a long, prosperous life. And if you haven't saved up and done the things that you need to do to ensure that you can live that life by design instead of by default, then that's a problem too, and you need to seek to correct that. And that also is about those self-limiting behaviors. So as we conclude today's episode, what I would ask everybody that's decided to listen into our little conversation today, take that walk, have that conversation. If you're not talking to a family member, ask yourself why. And even if it's their fault in your mind, reach out and see if you can help improve their day, because I promise you that will help improve yours too. With that, I am your host, Jeremy Dicker, the Hebrew Hammer. Thank you very much for listening to this week's episode of One Path to Wealth. If you like this episode and others, please remember to click like on your like button, subscribe to our blog and our podcast, and thanks very much. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to One Path to Wealth podcast. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at www.onewealthmgmt.com or give us a call at 855-663-9584. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of One Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Investment advisory services offered through One Wealth Capital Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Insurance solutions offered through One Wealth Management, Financial and Insurance Services, Inc.